Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Get Real show. We are here with Meg.
Hi.
Who has actually come on the Get Real show before on our very first season. And since then, we have actually become extremely good friends. I would consider Meg one of my best friends, and we've gone on many adventures together. And I definitely wanted to have you back to talk about many more topics, including the rim to rim to rim, which we just did, which for those of you who don't know, it's an ultra marathon in the Grand Canyon that is about 48 miles, give or take, and 12,000 feet of elevation. So thank you so much for coming on to Get Real again.
Yeah, anytime. I'm stoked to be back. And I feel like being on the last time, like, I got a new best friend out of it. So I'm so grateful for start to finish from where we've gotten to be.
Exactly. Well, I would love to know, obviously, like, where you feel like this adventurous spirit came from, and like you've done a million cool things already, but like how this really stacks up to other things you've done in the past and what the experience was like for you.
Oh, it feels like a loaded question. Yeah, I mean, I think by far it was the hardest thing I've ever done. I say to people, like, I didn't know how much suffering I'd face because I had never faced suffering like that before. It was crazy being, 4 to 3 to 2 miles from the top and having my brain start to play with me, like play games, like knowing that I was, 47 miles in and had 1 mile to go, but my brain was saying, you can't do it. You're not going to be able to do it. And like feeling that, like, swelling panic start to rise, and just like working with my brain to like quiet that down and to persist anyway, and I think obviously like you were really helpful in that. Like you had a smile on your face the entire time, and yeah, I think just like having a steady face to look to like reminded me that like I'm already okay, I'm going to continue to be okay, and like we were going to finish. But yeah, I mean, it was unbelievably hard, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, it definitely was. But I just feel like the same thing. Like, it was definitely the hardest thing I've ever done, but the best experience of my entire life. And I feel like it literally changed the trajectory of my life and my mindset, which
Totally.
is crazy because we do athletic endeavors all the time, but the fact that I actually feel like it changed my brain, whatever happened in that canyon, like I just feel like the lessons that I have taken from it, and I just feel totally different about athletics, about like you can apply those lessons to life. Like it really did overall just shift my mindset into like a different frequency, honestly, which is insane from a single day, that I feel like I got more out of that day than I have years of inner work.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it like that day was a culmination of months, like, yes, it was 15 and a half hours. But those 15 and a half hours like represented months and months that we had really put into something. And I think what made it so vastly different, I guess, from anything I've ever done, like both, I guess, like the difficulty, the length and the elevation gain, but also the fact that it was like self-supported.
Yeah.
Meaning there was no sweep vehicle coming behind us to pick us up if something happened, that like once we got to the other side, the only way back was back through, and so getting halfway meant you had to go all the way. Like there was no way to bail after that point. And I think there was a level, at least for me, of uncertainty almost, that it was like life risking in a way, that it was I was exactly like I was taking my life into my hands to see if I could do something. And there's like no turning back once you get halfway. But, and like carrying all your own food, everything that you needed to have with you, whether it was like emergency devices, SOS devices, like things like that, everything that you needed, you had to have with you. And then, yeah, I also think, getting to spend 15 and a half hours with my brother and with you, and just getting to hear the way that you guys interpret the world, or interpret things that are hard, like I remember just getting to listen to my brother, and we're all suffering, and like listening to the way that he suffers, like taught me a lot about how I want to suffer, like how I want to let my brain go to better places. And so I think those are the lessons that we can apply. Like, I know I can get myself out of anything because I got myself out of that, you know?
Yeah. What do you feel like he was saying or doing that was different that you would want to apply moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think he lives a really peaceful life. Like, he never is worried if other people are mad at him or if other people like him or are perceiving the way he comes off. Like, he is just there to be the best version of himself and isn't super worried about how other people's perception of that occurs. And I think I can spend a lot of time worrying about what other people think of me or if people are mad at me, or, you know, different things like that, which I guess is like kind of this self-centered thought process, right? Where I'm just like thinking that other people are thinking about me, which they're not. But I think just like getting to see the peace that he lives in, just, you know, showing up and being his best self and being kind to people and doing his best and trying hard things. And, you know, he really is like one of those people that walks into the room and is excited to see everybody. And so he doesn't have to be worried, you know? And I think any effort I spend thinking about what other people think about me is like really wasted effort. And when you're running for 15 and a half hours, you don't want to waste a lot of effort.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I've heard what other people think about me is none of my business.
Yeah.
And I really like that because it's definitely something I struggle with too. I think it's something most people struggle with. Like, it is an outlying attitude to just not care.
Right.
And for me, I feel like to think like sometimes people are thinking about you or talking about you, and most of the time they're not.
Yeah.
But if you are in that scenario, like, you just have to act to the best version of how you can be and just hope that you're giving off positive energy and positive vibes, a positive message into the world, and not everyone's going to like you. And it's definitely something that I've had to come to terms with, but it is hard because it's our natural reaction that we want people to like us and we want that validation. But I think when you're an extremist, like I certainly am, and you are, that you're not going to be everyone's cup of tea, and that's something that, like, I don't want to dial myself back to make someone else feel more comfortable or not have someone talk about me negatively, because for everyone that's going to say something negative, there's going to be someone saying something positive too. Totally. At the end of the day, it's really your own opinion that is the only one that matters.
Yeah. Yeah, like, you're the one putting your head on the pillow every night. And so if you're not, like, proud of who you are, then what's the whole point, you know? Yeah, definitely.
Do you feel like doing this helped with your confidence levels or your mindset? Like, what moving forward, do you feel like you can accomplish anything?
Yeah, definitely. And also just, like, a lot about how a lot of the stuff that I am worried about doesn't matter at all, you know? Like, and I think we talk about this a lot, but on our runs. And, you know, I think that having personal goals outside your professional goals, like having these massive things that you want to accomplish, which I think you're really good at. You set these like insane things that you're going to do and then you do them, you know? And I think having this experience, like having this rim to rim to rim adventure picked out and a date picked out and people to go with, like, gave me something to train for. And again, like we talked about, like, there was no way out. Like, I was the way out. And so if I slacked in training, if I, you know, didn't want to do strength or whatever, like, it was me that was hurting me, because it was up to me to get myself out of that canyon. And so I think, you know, just it taught me, like, I can rely on myself and I'm a beast and I can do anything, you know? And also just that, like, yeah, spending time in the desert with people I love, like, that's what I want to do. You know, I loved that. That was time well worth spent. And it just, you know, I think reframes everything to, like, what matters in life really is that kind of stuff rather than, like, the other stuff that I can get really wrapped up in.
Yeah, no, I feel the exact same way, where I've always been someone that says, like, oh, when I set a goal, I'm going to go accomplish that. But I've never taken on such a feat where it was so out of the realm of what might be perceived as possible for me.
Yeah.
And I just said, no, I'm gonna do it. Like, if other people, if other human beings on the earth can do it, why wouldn't I be able to?
Yeah.
Because it does come down to the training and the work that you put into it. It's not something that you're born with or not. It's something that you have to develop for yourself, and then the day of have the mindset to actually follow through with it.
Yeah.
And that was really interesting being in it, because I think everything that day went perfectly according to plan from God, from the universe, not my plan.
Yeah.
From whatever was supposed to happen to give me the lessons to move forward in life happened that day. Like, there was a point that I was by myself in the beginning, and I didn't know if I went in the right way. For as long as I could see in front of me and behind me, there was nobody around, and I was running out of water. I had no idea where the next water was. I essentially had like not even a full sip of water left, and I started praying. Like, in that moment, it was a little bit like life or death scary.
Yeah.
And just knowing, like, no, you're going to get yourself out of this. Like, it's up to you to get it. It really came down to just extreme survival. Like, there's not another option. And I think that's something that you have to apply in life sometimes, because we are normally in comfortable situations where there are other options.
Yeah.
And when you really want to accomplish a goal, you really have to just tell yourself, like, there is no other option.
Yeah.
This is getting done, and it's up to myself to get myself over that finish line, and only myself, essentially. And I ended up obviously meeting up with you guys, which was the best part. We did the entire second half together, which was just exactly like how I said, according to plan, because being on the North Rim by myself, I feel like was such an amazing experience. Like, getting to have those conversations internally, getting to actually talk to myself, like, you're out here doing this, like, building that mindset. And then having the second half where it was like relying on my best friend and your family, and having that experience that you can have a community that sticks with you and you can accomplish big things together, was amazing. And I really have the mindset around these things that I love doing them, and I think it's so important to suffer, to experience pain, but you can also experience joy simultaneously.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best part of these for me, is that it's not all about the suffering. Like, it's fantastic that you're having that experience, because that really changes the way you think and makes doing hard things a lot easier moving forward, but that you can still do it with a smile on your face and with gratitude in your heart, and move forward encompassing both.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. Like, I think hard for the sake of hard isn't really something I can get behind. I know that that's like a lot of people's vibe, and I love that for them. But, you know, I like to be out there for the sake of adventure. And that doesn't mean that it's like not hard. Like, there were endless amounts of suffering to be found out there. But there was also so much joy, you know, like there was so much laughter and giggling and joking and disbelief and smiling and, you know, looking at the views, and all of that happening at the same time in the same body. It's a lot, you know, there's so many emotions that your body can feel at the same time. And I think, like, when things do get hard, you have the ability to, like, remember that that too shall pass, you know, because you were just having so much joy. You were just joking down by the river, and now you're hiking through sand, and it's hot, and you're going uphill, and you're suffering, but you know it's going to pass, you know, because you just got through something else, you know, and you'll get through the next phase. You'll get through, like, the next section of the trail. And, like, good emotions and bad emotions, everything passes. And I think, you know, it's easy in moments of pain, whether it's like in, like, on a trail run or in life, to think that you're going to feel that way forever, you know? But this too shall pass, and you will be okay, and you already are okay. And I think we talk a lot about that. And I think, like something that you were mentioning before was like not knowing if it was possible. I think I'm really grateful for people that come before me, and the people that I look up to. I have like this incredible friend, and he's like, I look up to him so much. He's like an older brother to me. And I look up to his sobriety. I look up to the way he lives, the way he treats people. And he did this like 2 years ago. And I kind of say like anything that he does, I want to do, And so like he did it 2 years ago and I was like, perfect, I have to do it next year. And so I think knowing that he did it, I knew I could do it, because anything he does, I can do, and that has to be the truth because I look up to him and I want what he has. And so if he does it, I know I can do it, And so I guess like I just want to shout out all the people, not just the people I know, but there were so many people doing it that day.
Yeah.
We were not the only ones, it turned out. And yeah, people do hard things. People are really amazing. Like one of my favorite parts of that day, I guess, was coming across people who were hiking it, who had started hours and hours and hours and hours before us, and had hours and hours and hours to go. And they were in the best spirits, like just being absolutely delightful. Taught me a lot about the person I want to be.
Yeah. No, I completely relate, where I feel like really respecting people that have something that you want,
right,
and having that admiration and trying to then go out there and actually do it. I think a lot of times people think like, oh, that person is always super bubbly or doesn't drink or whatever it is that they think about someone else, but then you can get caught in the thought pattern, well, that's just them. I couldn't do that. Like that's just who they are. But who you are is built. Who you are is a culmination of moments and experiences that we can create for ourselves. And that's something that is so important to remember, that who I am today isn't going to be who I am next year, and who I am today isn't who I was 2 years ago. Thank God.
Yeah.
Because we continue to grow as people, and having role models that do these incredible things is so important. And I never want to be the smartest in the room, the fastest in the room, the doing the crazy adventure in the room. Like I want someone in the room that did this 3 times over again. So then I will want to strive for that and ask them questions about how they did it and how you can get there too, because it's just a continuous growth journey. And I just want to continue to actually grow and move forward. But I feel like throughout this, even the fact that it was an elevation and down a mountain, up a mountain, back down, back up with the flats in between, like it was even just a metaphor for life. Like you're going to have these lows and have to go down and work out the bottom and experience that flat for a bit before you climb back up and pull yourself back up, and then going back down again and having to pull yourself back out again. I think that's just a perfect metaphor for life and my sobriety as well. Like you can apply that to mindset, sobriety, whatever it may be, because we're not exactly what you said it beautifully. We're not always going to be at the height of our emotions. We're not always going to be at the height of happiness, and we're not always going to be in the valleys of sorrow either. That you can experience these things, and you might have to climb a mountain more than once. You might have to climb a mountain more than 100 times, but having that to fall back on, and having that skill set, and having that ability to know that I have done this and I will do it again, and I will continue to do it until I'm in a place where I do feel better, is so, so important. It's just really having that in your internal vault, essentially, that you can go back to if you need to pull yourself out of a dark spot again.
Yeah, totally. Like, I think there's this misconception that when you get sober, life gets easy. And it got better without a doubt, you know, like getting sober made my life better. But life still happens, you know, things still go on that make being a human being somewhat difficult. And I think, you know, sometimes they say in the world of recovery, like it's a design for living that works in rough going. And basically what you're promised is rough going, you know, but you're also promised like this toolkit of like how you can be a human being during all of that and like pull yourself out of it. And like you said, like there will be days when you're at the bottom, you know, and then there will be days when you're at the top. And it's all, you know, up and down and up and down, but like hopefully you can kind of try to find some peace and serenity in it all and do what you can, do what, you know, like control what you can, and give up what you can't.
Yeah, exactly. And even like the saying goes, don't quit before the miracle happens, because like you said, the end was the hardest part for myself as well. The very, very end too, which was crazy because you just essentially did about 47 miles and I found myself like the last 2 miles maybe being like, okay, where's the end? And then the last half mile, honestly, with half mile to go after the day you just had, you have 5 blocks till the finish. And that was the hardest part for me because you literally think, where is the end? When is this going to actually wrap up and have those feelings that I'm after and have the peak of the mountain essentially. And that is just the biggest metaphor for life, that you have to just keep hammering. And there was a point where I couldn't really see the end. Like I thought I saw the end and then the end wasn't the end and there was more, but there was only 1 block more. But if I was in my life and just had quit right when like I did all this work, I put everything I had into this, and then I thought this was all gonna come together and I was gonna experience joy, and then I didn't, I just stopped, I wouldn't know that literally there was 1 more block to go.
Right.
And that just, if you can take that mindset into your relationships, your work, your hobbies in life, like just knowing that don't quit until the miracle happens. Just don't give yourself another option, and it will come. That the universe, God, whatever you believe in, will repay you for what you're doing, whether it be today or 5 years from now. That there are just laws of the world, and if you put that work in, that there's only one way out, and there might be several struggles thrown at you in the meantime. But if you're able to get yourself through those struggles, that there's no way you're not going to end up on that peak eventually.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I like to say, like, you know, don't quit before the miracle happens, and then don't quit before the next one either, you know, because I think if there's one thing I've learned in like being sober for the past 6 years is that I've gotten promises on top of promises, you know, like, and you're given all these promises when you get sober. And they've just grown on top of each other. You know, like I've gotten serenity on top of serenity. I've given up resentments I truly thought that I was going to take to the grave. You know, I've shared secrets that I really just never thought I would. And I think like each time that happens, you get this like miracle on top of a miracle on top of a miracle, that I've gotten like a peace in my life truly that I just didn't know existed. And each year, and sometimes each day, it just becomes even more true, you know, and even more serene and even more peaceful. And all of it is like internal stuff. Like, I think sometimes it can be easy to think, oh, when I get the boyfriend, or oh, when I get the next job, when I get the promotion, when I get the pay raise, when I move here, when I get the car, then I'll be happy. And I think if anything, like a lot of what this being, you know, in the desert suffering had helped me remember is it's all internal work, you know, everything, wherever I go, you know, like if I go to my job and I get promoted, I'm still bringing myself. And so if my internal self isn't happy or isn't at peace or isn't proud of who I am, there's nothing that can happen on the outside that's going to change what's going on the inside. And I think you and I have like similar mindsets where it's, and this kind of goes back to like the suffering thing where if I'm not suffering, my brain will fabricate suffering.
Yeah.
You know, like if I'm not chasing dreams that are hard for me to get, I'm just going to find ways to have struggle in regular everyday life. And life is hard, you know, there's stuff that happens that's challenging or uncomfortable. But I think if I can like get through a 48-mile run that takes 15 and a half hours in 100-degree heat,
Yeah.
where I'm carrying all my water and food with me, like I don't get it. What else, you know, I can do anything, right?
Yeah.
Like anything. But I'm bringing myself. And so I better make sure that I'm happy with who I am.
Exactly. And if you don't visit your pain will visit you,
Yeah.
essentially. But that's exactly it. And I think that it just builds a mindset that nobody can take from you.
Yeah.
And that is the goals that I'm after today, is building and achieving things that nobody can take away from you and only you can give yourself. You cannot cheat your way there. You cannot buy your way there. You can only give yourself these achievements. And I think when you build a mindset like you do, doing these endeavors, that small life issues really can't set you back. So I always say, at the end of the day, I am a human being. Somebody could get to me, a situation could get to me. But if you think about your mindset like a set of bricks, and you've built that for yourself through each experience that you take yourself on or make yourself go through, or just lessons you've learned, and somebody takes one of those bricks away from you, I'm going to come back building 3 more.
Yeah.
And it might set me back for a minute or a day or a week, but in the end, that's only going to make me stronger.
Yeah.
And it is going to be a lesson in whatever capacity it was meant to serve me in the end. And in the moment, we can get caught up in not seeing the end goal, but any pain that we're going to experience today, tomorrow we can turn into a lesson. And it's about what you're doing with what is thrown at you that really matters. And really, you can use that to get set back, or you can use that to get yourself to the next level.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I think kind of like you said, like no one can take it away, right? And it's this oddly like intangible yet incredibly permanent thing. Like there's nothing, we didn't get a medal, right? Like it was fully self-supported. We arbitrarily picked a day to do it. And we went with a few people that we know, and there was no timer, there was no finish line. Like it was all very arbitrary. But no one can take away my experience of going through that and knowing that I can do it and getting myself out of the canyon and having you get me out of the canyon and having my brother get me out of the canyon and the other people we were with get us out of the canyon. And so while it's like intangible and there was no medal and there's no t-shirt, like it's this permanent thing that I'll always have, that I'll always be able to fall back on. And I hope like each year I can like pick a hard thing, you know, something that I like don't fully believe to be possible for myself and go after it. And like not hard for the sake of hard, but hard for the sake of building those bricks, you know.
Yeah. And I even think you're exactly right in the thought that doing something that, yes, at the end of the day, I believe I can do anything, but you do have doubts creep in.
Totally.
Like, I want to do something where those doubts haunt me in the middle of the night, that I think the night before, like, holy crap, can I actually do this?
Yeah.
And if it's not giving me that beforehand, I'm not really interested, because those are the times that you're really going to prove yourself wrong or right. And I like to think, like, on top of doing this stuff for me, like I do act a little bit in the way that a chip on your shoulder, like, I'm doing this to prove a lot of people wrong, and I'm doing it to prove a lot of people right. And the most important person I'm proving right is myself. And the most important person I'm proving wrong is my old self.
Exactly.
And I want to have those thoughts creep in that are questioning if I can do it or not. And I think that's part of the human experience. I think you might be a little bit narcissistic or completely insane if you've never thought, can I actually do it?
Right.
But then fighting that and saying, of course I can do anything I put my mind to. That's where the magic is for myself, at least.
Yeah.
Because to go against those doubts that you have in yourself and just continue on this delusion, I think first you have to start with delusion.
Yeah.
And then later comes the success. But I do think that you have to be, in a sense, a bit delusional at first.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah, like I think the first moment of being like, oh, I want to do the rim to rim to rim, tons of delusion there.
Yeah.
You know, like I only recently started, you know, relatively started running again.
Yeah.
And so to be like, oh, I'm going to do the rim to rim to rim, like there's a little, maybe a lot of delusion there. And yeah, like so much doubt, you know, those weeks leading up to it. I think at the beginning of our training, I was like, oh, we have this, you know? And then like the weeks leading up to it, there were so many moments where there were so many unknowns, you know, like bringing all my own stuff with me. Filtering water. Was my water filtration system going to work?
Yeah.
You know, was I going to be able to hold up in the heat? There was a lot of heat training that we didn't get to do because we lived in New York City during the winter and it was cold here, you know, and elevation training that we didn't have, and just being at elevation in general. Like we live in sea level here. So there were so many unknowns that absolutely kept me up at night. And I remember having crazy stress dreams in the weeks leading up to it, which I happened to be getting married the month after the rim to rim to rim. And the dreams were like this wild mix of like wedding stress and running stress. Like I had a dream that I did it in my wedding dress and it ruined the wedding dress. And it was just like this whole thing. But yeah, like at the end of the day, to go in there and have that doubt, but like pull myself out of it anyway. And like you said, like the chip on your shoulder, like I think so much of a chip on my shoulder comes from stories I tell myself, you know, and it's all my own brain that's coming up with this like crazy negative viewpoint of myself. And so like that chip on my shoulder is like truly against my past self, like you said, where it's just like younger Meg who didn't think she was worth the space she took up and perceived the people around her to think the same thing, you know, like I thought everyone around me thought I wasn't worth the space I took up, but that was just because I didn't think I was. And so yeah, like that chip on my shoulder is just like, you know, showing like whether it's the 6-year-old girl, the 12-year-old girl, the 14-year-old girl, the 20-year-old girl, like, gosh, you are so much more incredible than you even give yourself credit for, you know? And it's weird because I think we like live in somewhat of a society where like, obviously it's important to be humble. And I think so too. You know, I like being humble, so to speak, but it's also important to know when you're doing cool things, you know, and like to know that this thing that you did was really hard for you. And there's people that could do things that are harder, or their hardest thing might not look the same as my hardest thing. But to like give myself the credit when I do it, you know, because otherwise, like, did I even do it? You know, was it worth going through if I'm not giving myself that credit of like, yeah, you just proved yourself, you did it.
Exactly. Yeah, I think having a mix of the emotions, for myself at least, of going against the inherent feelings of being inadequate, which go back to as far as I can remember when I was younger, and then building on that. And then I think there's a point in my training, and honestly, it was when we started doing a lot of trail running and just switching mindsets and building on what I've already laid down, essentially, is getting to the point where, yes, I'm proving that wrong, but also now I'm doing it for happiness and fulfillment as well. And having it be both of those things, looping back to what I said in the beginning, both of those things at one time, but proving myself right and proving myself wrong is really the motivation for all of this, and why I want to keep doing this, because I've said before, it was truly the happiest day of my entire life and the best day of my entire life. And for myself even, so I don't know about you, but I mean, I know we've talked about some of it, but afterwards, I almost went into like an extreme low after I did it, because you have this massive goal that you set for yourself and then it's done.
Yeah.
And then you just think, now what? And this is a side I don't see a lot of people talking about for people that set really big goals for themselves or want to take on all these endeavors, is that sometimes you may experience a low afterwards, and that's really when you can fall back and think about, okay, I just pulled myself out of a canyon, like I'm gonna have to pull myself out of this mental canyon, and what are you going to do next? And it may look like resting, it may look like signing up for your next race, it looks like different things for different people, but being able to pull yourself out of that, because as incredible as the experience was, I think what came along with it was a several month journey.
Yeah.
For myself, it wasn't what just happened in there. It was several months leading up to it, which was incredible and taught me so much. But then it was several months after it was really that recovery process and reframing my mind and like taking what I learned from there and being able to move myself forward, but actually picking things that are worthwhile. Like, I think what you said was that when you were in there, you realized what's actually important or not. And it was almost an existential crisis when you leave and you go back to the city or you get back to your car and you just had the craziest experience of your entire life, and just it seems that nothing else matters when you go on something like that, and actually having to then readjust or recalibrate parts of your life that you don't want in your life anymore, and just doing like a bit of a cleanse afterwards and realizing, so what is making me feel a low after something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's like a ton of like post adventure, you know, and like I know people get it with marathons, like post marathon blues, where you just had this like massive thing that you'd been working towards for several months, and you can feel a little lost after. But a big thing I always say is like recovery is a part of the training plan. And so like you have this big training plan that you follow leading up to the event, and the recovery that comes after it is a part of that training plan. And sometimes that can be like really like lonely and you feel a little lost, you know, because now you're not running, you know, maybe it looks a little different, things feel a little different, you don't have like the same level of endorphins constantly, but I think like respecting that space that you're in and like letting the, I guess, lessons wash over you, and like reprocessing it all, and you know, remembering all the different things that you want to remember from it, and like honoring that space and honoring the low that you get to be in after it, because it is, I think, a moment where you do get to redirect your energy, where you can kind of say, okay, I just had this incredibly high, and it taught me a lot. And now like coming into this like next phase of life, if we think of like these big adventures as like end blocks in our phases of life, like coming into this next phase, like what do I want to take with me and what do I want to leave behind?
Exactly.
And I think I learned a lot through that too. Like the lessons I learned in the canyon, I really did try to like leave stuff behind, you know, like leave mental patterns, you know, just like different thought processes behind, and focus on like the person, like my highest self, which I do think I was my highest self that day. And so like, how can I like be that version every day? And I think that happens too, like in early sobriety, like you have this, like in early sobriety, it can be, at least for me, it was like that the thing I was most focused on was getting sober, you know? And so I had this like kind of, I guess, like cushion around me of like people helping me get sober. And then all of a sudden, like I had to go out into the regular world, you know, like I no longer was just like, all right, now I'm sober. Like, what do I do? And I had to like, I went and got a job, you know, I graduated school, I got a job. And you have this like amazing experience of like those early stages of sobriety, but like now you have to apply it to real life, and you're in this real life, and like you still have all that to fall back on. It's not gone. But yeah, like now you're just like in the real world. So I think coming back to New York after like the desert it felt a little like that, where it was like, all right, I'm coming back to real life. Like,
Yeah.
people don't even, like maybe people don't even know that I just did this crazy thing at work, and now I'm just like at my desk, like just working,
Yeah.
But like, who do I want to be at my job? Like, who do I want to be at home? Who do I want to be in recovery spaces? Like, who do I want to be as a runner?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I phrased it a bit confusing when I first was saying it, but the main thing for myself is that having that low or having that state of depression for a month, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever you go through isn't always a negative.
No.
That you can learn a lot from that. And that was exactly it, that I needed to cleanse parts of my life.
Totally.
And that really allowed and gave me space to do so. And I went back to the Grand Canyon after I did it, and I sat on a rock. I went down like a level, and I sat on a rock and looked out, because when you're in it, you don't really even get to grasp what you just did, or look out upon the canyon and see how absolutely insane where you were a day or two ago was. So I sat there and I was praying, just please let me detach or let go of anything in my life that is no longer serving me. And I was just sitting in that moment looking out at the canyon, thinking that, like, let me leave here in the canyon anything that's not serving me moving forward. And then I got exactly that. And it's not always in the form that we think. So sometimes you do have to experience that low so that you have the space to reassess, and you have that pain, where the saying always goes, people don't change until they have enough pain to do so.
Yeah.
So you're able to experience that and think, okay, so what am I going to change? Because I'm not staying in this, because I know how good you can feel, and this is not it.
Yeah.
So what am I going to do to get myself back to that happy place and get myself back to a level that I'm proud of? And having to do some soul searching is typically always a good thing.
Yeah. I think that's such a good way of putting it. Like, the low is you coming to terms with the stuff that you need to leave behind. Yeah. And I have so much of that, and it doesn't just have to be like after these crazy big runs, but it's like you're in this low because, whether it's like a character defect or a relationship or like, a pattern of thinking or thoughts or behaviors that you're like, it's no longer serving you. And it's now a low because you were just your highest self. And now you're coming back to face your less than highest self. And you have to leave it behind, and it's so uncomfortable. Like, change is uncomfortable. But I think there's like, if you pray for patience, like, you're not just going to get patience, you're going to get situations that give you patience, And so if I pray to have these defects removed, I'm not just going to like all of a sudden have these defects lifted. I'm going to be faced with situations that normally bring out those defects, and it's my choice to carry that defect into the next situation or to leave it behind.
Exactly that. And I think the fact that we both did this in our sobriety is just one more step that really makes it so incredible, is that, like, looking back on old versions of myself, and it is a reminder to go into that mental vault, like thinking about myself pre-sobriety, when I was thinking my life is now over, I'll never be able to drink again, and thinking that where we are today and what we've accomplished even now and how much further we have to go is so incredible, and something that nobody can take away from us, essentially. And just an incredible thought to have.
I agree. Like, I think, there was definitely like the moment of getting sober and being in those early stages where I truly thought my life was over, and obviously, like, I was alive. I was aware that my actual living life was not over, but I thought anything worth doing had to do with alcohol. And it's just been so the opposite, like, anything worth doing is hard, and like, I just feel that, especially in the outdoor space, there is a lot of alcohol. And I think it's great for people that don't have problems, you know, like I respect everyone's use around alcohol, but I think getting sober, I thought there was no spot for me. You know, I thought that I could never go on a mountain bike ride again, or that I wouldn't be able to like show up on these trail runs, because so many group runs end at breweries. And I just thought there was like no space for me anymore because I didn't drink. And it's just been so the opposite. You know, everyone that inspires me the most comes from my sober life. And that doesn't mean that there's not incredibly inspiring people that aren't sober. But like being sober doesn't mean that you're not going to do anything cool ever again. I feel like everything I've done in sobriety was eons cooler than the stuff I did before.
Yeah. I think too, just finding your footing, and that's something that took me a bit, and that you don't always know where you're going to end up. And sometimes it is a continuous path of self-discovery and self-learning. And for myself, I'm most comfortable, or most uncomfortable, which makes me comfortable, doing things of this magnitude, but then also going and seeing my friends and being happy and having both experiences, that you can go and suffer and do an ultra marathon, and then you still can go out dancing with your friends, and you can have both, and you can have both those experiences, and really finding what works best for you, because it is not a one size fits all solution. Because for myself, last night was Friday night, I went on a run, I had so much fun, I was blasting music by myself, and that's most Friday nights for me. But then if my friend's in town and we want to go out dancing, like that is too also fun, but I wouldn't have fun on that if I didn't follow what feels good for me for the most part. And I think finding like, and it is from growing in a relationship with yourself and growing your own self-worth and your own self-confidence, to be able to say like, this is what feels good for me, and not just always rolling with the punches of what am I supposed to be doing, or what is somebody else doing. And just listening and developing that intuition.
Oh my gosh, like saying no, like oof, that was so it's still hard for me. I'm not gonna act like I'm really good at it. It's still hard for me. I have friends that do super different things than me, and they're always inviting me to go do these things, and I have this like overwhelming sense of guilt when I say no, because whether it's like, hey, let's meet up at 10 p.m. in Brooklyn, and I've agreed to run with Maddie Brady at 5 a.m., you know, like that doesn't work for me. I can't go to Brooklyn and stay out late and then come home and like be my best self on the place that I feel my best self already. But I would never have any judgment for someone not wanting to come run with me. And I don't give myself that same grace, you know, like my friends are going to understand if I have things that I enjoy doing that conflict with what they enjoy doing. And it doesn't mean that, you know, they're not my friends. I think it's like learning to say no has made me less resentful, right? Because if I say no to something and I don't go, then I don't have to then I'm not uncomfortable with myself, and I'm not looking to blame other people. And just like being okay with doing what I like doing, and like carving out time for the stuff that I enjoy, and like still showing up for people in important moments. But like being okay not going to the late night things if it's not what I want. You know, I think that's like been important.
I would say the same thing, where the biggest thing I still struggle with today, this is not something that I'm saying that I've gotten over in any way, I really struggle with letting down people that I really respect and really look up to. Not saying that it doesn't affect me letting anyone down, but I feel like when there's somebody that they have something I want, or I just really think they're a great person, I really value their relationship in my life and who they are as a person, and I do something that I feel like is letting them down in a way, that is really, really difficult for me. And I think you're exactly right with what you said with not giving yourself the same grace, because I know my admiration for that person. If they came to me and said, this is what's best for me, I would want them to do what's best for them. But then when it's flipped around, it's really difficult to see the situation that way.
Totally. Yeah. totally. Like, I think it's so easy to think that other people are upset. Like, I mean, I think this goes exactly back to what we talked about at the beginning, where it's, I'm worried people are mad at me. And people are not mad at me, you know? And if they are, then I would hope that I've built a relationship with them that they feel that they can come and talk to me. And if there's something I need to address, I would love to address it. But if they're not going to talk to me, then it's not my business, you know? And I think that that's like so important for me to learn. And goes back to like saying like, that's the lesson I learned in the canyon, where it's just like, my brother is never thinking that people are mad at him. And of the times that we're both guessing, right? So I'm guessing that XYZ are mad at me, and he's guessing XYZ are not mad at him. He is wrong very few times. And I am wrong almost all the time, you know? And I think it's just this, like, it's not my job to worry about what other people are doing or what other people think of me. Like, my job is to do what's best for myself. And like respecting that space and getting better at owning that.
Yeah. And I think too, like, building the self-worth to be okay if someone is mad at you is very important, because I just had a friend telling me she was writing something about the difference between self-confidence and self-worth. And self-confidence is given to you by doing things like the rim to rim to rim, or getting a deal at work, or getting a promotion at work. So it's something that can be given to you by these experiences, and it is something that could come and go. So a lot of times when, like, I think as athletes, it's natural, like, a month later you might be like, oh, I'm barely an athlete, like, forget what you just did. And that is self-confidence. But building self-worth is having the inherent belief that you are worth something, and that you do belong with where you are, and you do belong getting yourself to next levels. And that's something that I still work on all the time, and I hope to continue to build, because that's what's ultimately going to give yourself the power to be okay when you are letting someone down, or you do have someone mad at you, and you are in those tough situations.
Like, I'm worthy of love just because I am, you know, and I'm worthy of the space that I take up just because I am. And I think that is definitely something that you just have to get better at feeling. Like, you have to get better at just trusting in your deepest core that who you are is worthy of love. And I think once you start to get better at that, and we've talked about this a little bit, like, then people's negative reactions towards you almost surprise you. You know, where I used to think, like, when I was growing up, not even growing up, like, honestly, until a pretty good amount of time into being sober, I just didn't love myself, and I hated myself, you know? And so, like, when I perceived people to have negative reactions towards me, it didn't surprise me at all. It was like, oh yeah, perfect. I hate myself too, you know? That checks out. And now it's like, I've really loved who I've become, you know? I'm really proud of the person that I am. And so, like, when I pick up on negativity, I'm shocked, you know? And I know that I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea, and that's, like, totally okay, because I would never want to, like, squash who I am just to fit somebody else's preference. And there should be people in the world that don't find me to be their preference, you know, because then I know that I'm being my full self. I hope to be kind to everybody. But yeah, it is always funny nowadays, like, when I feel like I'm being my best self and someone isn't, you know, into it, I'm like, how could you not be into this? And I think that's, like, a beautiful thing, you know, to finally, like, love myself so much that I'm surprised when someone doesn't.
And actually staying true to who you are, I think, is so important today. Like, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And that's not who I want to be. And there's also a saying about how if you're a friend to everyone, then you're not a friend to yourself. And that's not a situation that I would want to be in at all. But so what is next for you? Obviously, we just did this crazy thing, but we're always plotting and planning about what's next. What do you feel like is a big goal that you're going to accomplish next? I mean, so I'm running the Chicago Marathon in October.
And it's interesting coming back to the road running scene. Just today we were on a group road run. And I can get thrown off by like the different vibes at road runs. And someone was like, "Oh, are you a trail runner?" And I struggled to identify as a trail runner. But yeah, I do think I enjoy being out on the dirt a lot. So I'm excited about Chicago. I think it's going to be like fun to, do another road race. It's hopefully a quick course. So I'm hoping to get a PR, and, see what happens. And then I think like come the spring, we're plotting some things. We're thinking another desert adventure. Who knows? Got some ideas up my sleeve. I think like another ultra type event that involves like a little bit of self-support as well. I enjoyed that a lot. I liked the non-race setting. I liked the self-support, just like being with your homies in the woods. And then, I think it'd be fun to do like a European trail running trip next summer, hopefully hut to hut to hut. So I'm open-minded to what happens. I think I take it as it comes. And I think like having big training blocks with, periods of recovery has been super fun. And, I think it's like my favorite way to spend time with people is to run with people. And so it works out well for my social life.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on and getting real and sharing your experience and honestly changing my life.
Maddie, thanks for changing mine.
I feel like I always knew there was a part of myself that wanted to do these big things and wanted to go running through the woods, and that's just not something I ever got to experience before. And I'm so grateful for you that you opened my eyes to a whole different world, and not only the amazing friendship that we built, but a whole different world that I knew nothing about. I can't wait to just dive further and further into it and see where we both take it. So thank you for
Cheers,
coming
Maddie.
on and getting real.
Anytime.